Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Rich. And while folks are starting to jump on, as always, I'm going to take a second and just get set up here. As you can see by the split screen, I'm joined by Jon Marvell this morning. And I'm going to ask Jon to introduce himself in just a moment. But before I do, let me get set up. Welcome to Coffee with Rich. Okay, we're set up. Got 5 people on so far. As you're joining on, please like and share. And I will go ahead and take a moment to thank our sponsors today's show, Appalachian Standard. Appalachian Standard is a veteran-owned craft hemp company in the beautiful mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, and they have all your CBD needs. I use CBD for my joints, for rolling jiu-jitsu. It really helps. I've had 3 knee surgeries, as you know. I got a screw holding my shoulder together from 23 years in the Marine Corps. And I tell you what, the products over at Appalachian Standard have really helped me with that. Not only that, but my cognitive function. So check out everything they have to offer at the link below, apphemp.com. And if you use our discount code AWS15, you'll get 15% off all your purchases. If you'd like to pick up some cool American Warrior Society swag, you can do that at the links below. If you didn't know that we have the America's #1 self-defense podcast, please check that out, the American Warrior Show, everywhere you find your podcast. As always, you can find our amazing training vault with everything you need for your self-defense at AmericanWarriorSociety.com. Without further ado, thank you to the 16 folks that are joining us already this morning, and thank you everybody that will join us on the replay in the days to come. And I am really excited about this guest today. I've had to beg him to come on. This is Jon Marvell. Good morning, Jon.
Hey, good morning, Rich, and good morning to everyone who's joining us here. Looking forward to having some really good discussion today with a bunch of great Americans.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jon, for coming on. Thanks to the 17 folks that are here. Let's take a little quick roll call, see who's joining us this morning, and please like and share while I do. We've got Will Parker out there in Montana. And Will, it was great breaking bread with you out there in Montana a few days ago and getting to shoot with you and Vicky and all the other folks that came to the defensive handgun course out in beautiful Missoula, Montana. John out there in Oklahoma, coin number AWS 1919. Gerald out in Oregon. Good morning, Gerald. It's awful early out there. Troy, Walt, Jared, coin number 895. Jared, sorry I missed you out there in Montana, man. I should have stuck around for the rifle course. Tiny, Skylar, Dan out there, coin number 1968 in Georgia. Mark is on. Good morning, folks. 23 people on. Please take a moment, like and share before I start asking Jon to tell us more about himself, because this is going to be a great show. You definitely want to check this one out. Morning, Rudy. So please take a quick share break. Share it into a group. Share it with somebody that needs this information, because Jon is going to tell us about all the things they're doing over at Building Shooters, and you won't want to miss it. Dr. Johnathan is on. Hey, Jon, without further ado, man, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, okay, Rich. So I just recently retired last year after 29 years in the Navy. Went right in out of high school, enlisted, learned about electronics. Just opportunity is what it is. I was able to go to the Naval Academy. And then from there, I chose Special Operations, or EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. Spent most of the last 20 years doing things like that. The experience included being on a mine hunting ship in Bahrain and multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, doing, what we, of course, the last couple of decades really of war were IED centric. So had plenty of experience with that, working with some of the greatest, I'd say some of the greatest Americans that, was really an honor. And privileged to serve with. Wrapped up most of my operational time with working with some SEALs. So that was a whole different kind of spin on things, really awesome. Got to do a lot of cool stuff, parachute, dive, work with explosives, work with small arms. Not the typical Navy experience of riding ships or submarines or flying airplanes, but really, really great experience. Again, like I say, very proud of that. Very, very honored by being able to be part of the communities I was in. More recently here, I've transitioned out And as you mentioned earlier, I'm the president of products and technology for Building Shooters Technology. It's a new startup company that with a focus on brain-based training system design. And we can get into a little later. I can tell you a little bit about some products we're trying to develop that'll specifically help that.
Wow. What a career, John. I think I told you when I first met you, probably about a month or so ago, the coolest dudes I ever probably served with was some Navy EOD people down in Subic Bay, Philippines, another lifetime ago. Man, they were really cool guys. I mean, they were a bunch of pirates, I think I would call them. But they really did your community well, and I always thought, man, I missed it. I should have been a Navy EOD guy.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We got Jason is on in Northern Virginia. How does one get a coin? Jason, American Warrior Society is comprised of coin members who have chosen to join the American Warrior Society and learn more about protecting themselves and others. And you can find out more about that at AmericanWarriorSociety.com. Thank you for being on, Jason. Robert, good morning from Northern Kentucky, coin number 1401. Garrett is on. Good morning from Alpha. Robert is on. Steve. Kat is on. Good morning, Santa Fe, Texas, coin number 2013. Wow, Kat, good morning. And you are one of our newer members. Tiny, did I see a double distinguished medals on that photo? Yeah, the photo we put up of you, John. Tell us about those medals you got there.
Oh, thanks. So a little known thing, in all the military services, they all have a distinguished program. So it goes back to early 1900s, and basically the program is in rifle and pistol, service rifle, service pistols, where it all started and continues through to today. The top 10% of people at specific matches are awarded what they call leg medals, or excellence in competition medals and points. And once you accumulate a certain number of points for the Navy system, I think for most of the services and the civilian system through civilian marksmanship program, 30 points is it. And typically you have to have a gold or a silver. So there's gold, silver, and bronze medals. Gold is worth 10 points, silver is worth 8, and bronze is worth 6. So we say you have to have a heavy metal requirement, which means you get a gold or a silver to become distinguished. And once you get your 30 points, then you're awarded a distinguished badge, which is usually, it's a big deal. In the Navy, there's not too many folks that realize that that's still a thing. So typically, a lot of our sailors come back after they've been awarded the EIC points or a distinguished badge, and they come back and their senior enlisted's typically the one to grab them in the hallway, hey shipmate, and they have a kind of a one-way conversation real quick. And it's mostly because the senior enlisted aren't familiar with that award or a lot of the programs. But I call it, I think competitive marksmanship, regardless of the discipline, is America's oldest pastime, right? My dad loves baseball, and I argue with him about that a lot. I'm like, Dad, as long as there's been two siblings in a slingshot, there's been a marksmanship competition. So let's let it rest.
I love it. And I can attest, having seen you shot, John, you're a heck of a shot. And if I'm not mistaken, weren't you the OIC or something like that for the Navy Marksmanship Unit before you retired?
Yeah, that's right. And sorry, I left that out. Another real highlight of the last few years I had in the Navy, the last 3 years, I was the OIC of the Navy Marksmanship Unit, which isn't a formal unit anymore due to funding. It's more of a volunteer organization, but it's all active duty and reserve folks with a lot of support from our retired community, really strong retired community. And each year, this year being an oddball for everyone with the COVID impacts, we typically have an East Coast Fleet Championships and a West Coast Fleet Championships. And from there, we try to pick the best team to go forward and compete at inter-service. And then, of course, at nationals as well. Inter-service, I think rifle is going on this week or just wrapped up. Inter-service pistol was a couple weeks ago. Very weird scheduling, but nationals, of course, was canceled this year as well. So,
All right. So, having told us a little bit about your background, I would ask you, what was the most important thing that you learned while serving in the Navy?
Yeah, that's right. And sorry, I left that out. One of the another real highlight of the last few years I had in the Navy, the last 3 years, I was the OIC of the Navy Marksmanship Unit, which is a formal unit anymore due to funding. It's more of a volunteer organization, but it's all active duty and reserve folks with a lot of support from our retired community, really strong retired community. And each year, this year being an oddball for everyone with the COVID impacts, we typically have an East Coast Fleet Championships and a West Coast Fleet Championships. And from there, we try to pick the best team to go forward and compete at inter-service. And then, of course, at nationals as well.
What is your opinion on the state of the military today?
So I think the biggest thing, and I think everyone gets that, in the military, right, we all follow orders. It's not blindly robotic. I think anyone that's been in realizes that that's really a myth. There's situations where that may be true, right? When bullets are flying in true emergency situations, that's when those things kind of kick in. And it's mostly of a survival, kind of reason or rationale. So the state of the military, right? The military works for our elected civilian government. So again, it's kind of a product of what's that elected civilian leadership directing, and it's a slow turning wheel, like anything. Big organizations take decades to change in some cases. But I think in general, right, we should never lose faith with the people that sign up and raise their right hand, the great patriots that come forward to serve. And I think that's probably the greatest asset. One of the greatest assets we have as a nation is the number of people, the vast number of people that are still willing to do that. As far as the state of the military, kind of on a different aspect, I would say we seem to be a little overly confident in technology. We want to, at least from some of my experience with the Navy, we want to go to automated things, and we want to go to these very high technology solutions that it typically can't, the technology just isn't there to deliver in the time frame that's expected. It seems, again, my opinion, and I don't think that those are bad pursuits. I just think that the expectations that that's going to be a solution, within a decade or things like that, it seems a little bit over optimistic. And my point there is to bring it back to, so what? We can never forget, we can never forget that the human's part of the combat system. Near and dear to my heart, because of the experience I had in the Navy. I understand if I was on a little ship at one point, and I definitely would, appreciated every bit of automation that could be there. But at the end of the day, right, when machinery's taking damage, battle damage, or things like that, you still have to have the human being to kind of fix that. So, a determined and willing human factor has always got to be at play in this. So I hope that never changes. I by no means do I think that we're on the doomsday course or anything like that. I think Americans will always rise to the challenge, whatever that is, each day.
Yeah, so you bring up some interesting points there, John, and one of them is, this I'm going to call it, this is Rich's words and certainly not yours, but an over-reliance on technology. We've seen where this leads some of the intelligence services when they kind of dismantled some of their human structures and went to more technology-based solutions, and I think they overlooked the human element of the problem, which is the biggest piece of the problem. But so having said all that, what's the future look like? Where are we heading?
That's a great question, Rich. And, it's hard to say. I think that the natural gravity, of course, is going to be to continue to push technology and technological solutions. I think when you look at our American, let's just talk about it from a business standpoint, budgetary wise. The people are actually, surprisingly to me, and I got to see a lot of the facts again as I got more senior, people are the most expensive aspect of anything, of any organization. So I can understand where technology, is a natural, okay, well, I can just replace that human with some sort of a system or machine that can probably do things more efficiently. And and there's a lot of gray area in there that could do a lot of rabbit holes. But, in general, I think that's a natural gravity that's just going to be a part of this. We're going to have that as we become more of an internet-based or web-based, right, electronics-based society as we have, right? Those sorts of technologies offer, unique vulnerabilities that are going to have to be protected, I guess. And there's going to be, unique challenges that come up. So, the future is bright, and it can also be scary like anything else. But again, right, as the technology comes along, right, there's always smart people that come up with the solutions to those problems. Again, we rise to the challenges that we face.
Yeah, and I hear you. There was a politician, maybe during the war in Kosovo, that said, "Yeah, we own this territory." And I remember being like, "We have no people on the ground." Like, yeah, but we can fly planes over it. We can fly anything we want over it. I'm like, yeah, but maybe this is just my own personal bias, having been a Marine infantryman. But until you have that 18, 19-year-old Marine with an M4 in his hand standing on that piece of property, you don't own it. You can fly over it all you want. You can have technology listening to it all you want. But until some American is standing there on it, it ain't yours. Let's take a moment before we go much further and welcome everyone to the show. If you're just joining us, my name is Rich Brown. This is Coffee with Rich, and I am the co-host of the American Warrior Show, co-founder of the American Warrior Society. And I'm joined today with Mr. Jon Marvell, retired Navy EOD officer, 29 years of naval service, and he is kind enough to join us today. Please take a quick moment to share, hit that share button, and we'll take a quick moment before we get into firearms training, which is something that Jon knows quite a lot about. I can assure you that. Jon, what's the state of firearms training, or how did you see it evolve during your time, your 29 years of service?
So in the big picture, I think all the services suffer from, we went from where the Captain's Cup kind of tournaments, right? The MWR, the off-duty, intramural kind of sports competitions used to involve small arms shooting, right? You couldn't go to a base where there wasn't a small arms range. There wasn't a program. And I think in general, everyone, I think regardless of the service, now I'm going way back decades here of talking with, lots of retired folks, and what I think they were saying when they recalled stories of kind of grander times. But shooting was not, in firearms in general, didn't have the stigma that it seems to have today. And it's kind of a negative thing. A lot of the bases, I live here in Virginia Beach, and we've got a pretty good Navy concentration in the area. But what we don't have is an abundance of ranges. And by that, I say there's some indoor ranges that are used, but they're 25 yard or 25 meter typically. There's not a lot of what we call KD or known distance ranges that go out to 500-600 yards. So when folks are training with their rifles in particular, right, they don't get the challenge of the environment, right, wind, or having to turn the knobs on, what used to be iron sights and now primarily is some sort of an optic. They aren't necessarily as savvy on that. It's not as emphasized, right? There's not a lot of training time given to it. And it's not just because someone doesn't value those things. It's more about priorities, right? They've got a lot of other technology things. They've got a lot of other training requirements that push the small arms training into a tighter and tighter box, I think, each year. So I think, unfortunately, the ability to effectively train, right, for everybody to just have such an unconscious competence of solid marksmanship has really devolved over the years to today, where, especially with the bullseye, right, the things I did with the marksmanship team, the bullseye pistol and the service rifle kind of competitions, they really take essentially basic marksmanship to a very extreme level, to a real precise level. Some of that's practical. Obviously, fundamental marksmanship applies to everything you do. I always tell guys, hey, cross-train. Don't just be a pistol guy. Don't just be a rifle girl, right? Don't just be an action shooter, right? There's things to be said for that that are just universal. So solid marksmanship, begins and ends with that sight alignment, trigger control, all those sorts of things. But unfortunately, I think it's a matter of the priorities, right? And where we see people. Again, I think there's kind of a mentality in some services more than others that, hey, we're not necessarily going to be putting people in harm's way. So that's a natural connection. If I'm going to put people in harm's way, then of course I want them trained to defend themselves. Small arms is a part of that. But if I've got more of a technology-based skill set that I'm raising my new force to be, I don't necessarily connect those two. I can kind of lower the priority of the small arms training. And I think that's all part of it. I don't think it's a black and white thing. I don't think there's necessarily any, malice in it. I think it's a very, very demanding time for the Department of Defense. There's a lot of top-down driven directives about training and things that, just to keep it very vanilla, I think guys like you and I would just be like, you've got to train to do what or about what? You're spending how many hours talking about that? So I don't really want to go too far down that road because, again, I don't disrespect our elected leadership, and I definitely don't want to disrespect the folks wearing uniform because they're out there, right? They're still out in harm's way at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. For me, I came in 1989. When did you come in?
1990.
1990. Okay. So we were in about the same time. And I remember the cultural shift that I saw probably started in 92. I was on a ship doing a med float, and the tailhook scandal broke, and we canceled a lot of our real training that we were going to do in order to do sexual awareness training, or I can't remember what the catchphrase was at the time, sexual harassment training, something like that. And it seemed like that kicked open the door for a flood of other diversity training that seemed to dominate our training schedule. And for us back then, the amphib ships were all male, the infantry units were all male. And I'm like, where am I coming in contact with these women that I'm supposed to be harassing? Because I have no opportunity. It just seemed kind of strange to me at the time. But as, flash forward 30 years, and we do have women on amphib ships. It is relevant. It is practical to get this training, but at the expense of some of the most basic rudimentary things we're supposed to be able to do, locate, close with, and destroy our enemies with fire maneuver. We're going to have that marksmanship training. So we definitely can't overlook that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Let's see. As far as a little while ago, you mentioned that you are the president of products and technology for building shooters. What are you guys doing over there, John?
So to zoom out a little bit, building shooters is primarily, as I mentioned earlier, right? It's a company based around applying brain-based research, neuroscience, to improve training systems. So we apply that primarily to tactical and firearms training. So Dusty, who hopefully you can get him on here in the future, we go way back, like I said, back before electricity. I met Dustin at the academy where we got into my first competitive shooting team, and we've been friends ever since. Fantastic guy. He spent 6 years in the Navy, got out, did a lot of time as a contract security professional. And more to the point, he's really spent the last 20 or so years of just totally researching this problem, looking at how do we train, how could we train better, and how do we do it without relying on, really, really high technology, right? Put it at a price point that everyone can reach, and do it in a way that is the most effective that we can figure out how to do. So he's written a couple of books, or a few books now. He just released his most recent one, but he wrote Building Shooters back in 2016. And Mentoring Shooters, which was a follow-up, I want to say in 2017, 2018. And then on training, he just released that. If you're interested, please check that out at our website at buildingshooters.com. And there's links to how you can get those from, I think, Amazon. Really good reads. They're kind of heady. So just understand that it's a very intellectual, right? There's no easy way to tell that story. It's very intellectual. It's very science-based. But what it boils down to is, two fundamental failures in how most organizations train when it comes to firearms. And that's the training doesn't align to how our brains actually learn. And then the other thing is we don't have a really good way to measure performance that is very much in line with operational success. In other words, does my metric actually reflect what someone would actually do in a real situation, right? To put it simply. And that, again, is just kind of the limitations of the available technology. So you think about today, right? Most folks will go to a range for FAM fire. Your decision making about whether or not you're going to shoot isn't in play. You know you're going to go there. You know you're going to load your whatever magazines or whatever the course of fire is for your organization. And you know you're going to stand out on a range. You're probably going to be on a lane with your target or maybe multiple targets, depending on what's going on. But you know at some point you're going to be asked to demonstrate some skill set. And there's usually a go signal, maybe not. But there's no decision making. You're not reacting to behavior of a subject or even using the same neurological circuitry that you use when you're doing that constant threat assessment in the real world. So we want to go after things like that. And to go after, how we structure a training system really gets after that, how the brain learns piece. And then what we're looking at doing is developing a piece of kit, actually a system of systems that's going to help people do that. Right now, unless you've got a really good budget, you probably can't afford a simulator room, for example, a live fire simulator in particular. And then there's limitations with most of those, right? They're multi-million-dollar and they're kind of a limited footprint, right? Limited area to work within. So you're going to be limited in some aspect of your training as far as shoot and move and certainly team type tactics, typically very limited. So what we want to do is alleviate that with a couple of products that go after, visual stimulus and incorporating that decision-making into whatever your training scenario is. So that's really exciting. And again, that's all in development. So, we're hoping to get a product out here within the next 6 months to a year. And I think once we have something that we can show folks, I think you'll probably see us putting together some videos and actually showing that off. I think we've got plans to go out and actually demonstrate some of that as well. So, to come back to what are we trying to do, again, we want to align training with the cognitive structure, cognitive architecture. We want to actually train and test the same neurological and physiological circuitry and hardware of our body in training as we would actually use in the operational or tactical scenario. And then we also have to be able to measure that performance. So if we can do that, obviously now I can identify ideally very quickly, someone that's having some issues or someone that's likely to potentially be a problem. I can really target and tailor that training for the folks that are potentially going to have problems out there. And that just makes everybody safer. And potentially we can do this. We can develop some pre-traumatic stress resilience because we're exercising the things that we want to use in the real world, not parts of it or kind of parallel paths, if that makes any sense. Rich, are you read in or well versed on a lot of the neuroscience of how we learn? And
I remember when Dustin came on the show, and that was probably the first time that I got exposed to what you guys are up to, and I think that was about in 2016 or so. And folks, if you're joining me this morning, check out the show we did with Dustin Solomon. Like I said, probably back 4 years ago. I can't remember if the book was Mentoring Shooters that he had out at that time or which one it was, but a phenomenal book. I've got it at home. You need to have it at home if you're a firearms instructor. And one of the things that you talked about, I think is really cool, and that's bridging the gap between your shooting skill and your decision-making skill as to when it's time to shoot. And I think Attorney Andrew Branca, who's on with us this morning over at the Law of Self-Defense, would be interested in that as well, because we bring Andrew out each year, John, when we do our warrior camp.
Right.
And it's a 4 or 5 day event. But Andrew will put everybody through his 8-hour Law of Self-Defense class. And at the end of the day, we'll do a simulator with CERT handguns, shot indicating, resetting trigger, the little laser guns. And they'll actually have to use good firearms, right? And at the same time, decision making. So I think the fact that you're putting that cognitive architecture, to borrow your words, together is fascinating, man. How are y'all doing that?
So, the first product is going to be essentially we take the functionality of a shot timer. First product is going to be called the Neuro, and it'll be targeting a price point that's on par with what an standard issue firearm will be, because we want this to be something that proliferates. Law enforcement is primarily who we think will benefit the most from this. But basically, we take the shot timer functionality. We put in visual stimulators. We still have the audible, the buzzer, right? We still have those, but we add a visual stimulation that, again, is very low technology. We use laser lights, so we do have some limitations, but it's just physics. We're not, there are regulated power outputs, right? And there's safety issues when you get to certain powers with the lasers and things. But we figured out a way to use different colors lasers. We can modulate we can have it blink at different speeds and rates, and that stimulates how our brain detects motion, for example. And then we also have a beam splitter that can project different images with the laser beam. So it's not just like laser pointer dots. It can be, but you also have the option for some different images that it could project. Say, for example, the outline of a gun, a knife, a open hand to indicate surrender, or some other thing. And then any number of shapes, right? We're left to the imagination. And we can, these things will be networkable, so you can build different arrays, and you can build fully realized, right? We'll be able to develop whole courses of fire that respond to the individual shooter, that, and it also scores. I mean, fully realized, we're going to have an automatic scoring technology that we'll incorporate in that system of systems in time. So imagine the time. Oh, so sorry, I almost forgot. One of the other core developments is a sensor, an individual sensor that you wear much like a wristwatch. So that sensor can detect when, what individual is actually firing. In the case of live fire, we want to get this down to dry fire cert. We want to get it applied to everything. But in the case of in the case of live fire, one of the limitations that you have on a typical range is you've got, let's just say 20 people show up to do the training, and you can only have one person shoot at a time with current shot timers, because there's no way to discern one shot from another, one gun from another. So we went after that with a pretty, again, not unsophisticated, but not high technology solution. We have a couple of different sensor technologies in a wrist mounted, basically the size of a wristwatch. And that will enable the sensor or the whole system to know who took what shot. Mm. And now I can literally have all 20 people shooting at the same time. And conceivably, they could be running different courses as well. And all of that automatically getting scored. So imagine the time savings that could be had for, just if we do it the way we do now. And then what I'm always a big believer is this technology is going to lead us to doing it better, right? We're going to develop better ways to train, because because people are creative, they're inventive, they're as you guys taught me a month or so ago, right? The student's going to do what the student's going to do. Well, people are going to figure out creative ways to use technology that we didn't even envision. So I think this is really going to be revolutionary in how we train. Once we get this out in people's hands and they start using it, it's really exciting, right? To think that now, we can use it to teach people how to escalate force, for example, right? Appropriately. We can use it to provide the feedback for what did the target do, right? It gives you that behavior. So now we can train people when to stop shooting, which I don't think, anyone has other than a simulator, right? The high-end stuff where there's something that visually cues you that the person's down, or the target's down, the suspect's down, whatever. Nobody else can say that. So that's another really exciting aspect of this that given this current state of affairs, right, that I think is really huge too, right? So it's kind of a crazy time here socially, of course.
Well, and I got to see the prototype when you came out to train with Mike and I, and I was really impressed with it because the shock timer has limitations, and is anyone that's ever used one, and the shoot command in reality is not an auditory stimulus, right? It's the visual stimulus tells us when. And I think that what the prototype that I saw, just to use layman's terms with it, it projects something onto the target that you can see and react to, and it's linked to the start timer. So you start on a visual cue instead of an auditory cue, which I think for law enforcement and the military is going to be priceless. I mean, because unless you have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy something like a FATS trainer or an Ismuth or one of these other systems, what size agency has that kind of money? Not many, especially the smaller departments. I think to have something like what you and Dusty are working on, I can't wait, man. I'm going to be one of the first guys in line to buy one. I know that.
Good.
Hey, let's see who's on here this morning. Jared says, I have building shooters and the principles are way beyond just shooting. I've used the principles to train my employees. Stephen Washington, another student from our firearms instructor class, is on this morning. Good morning, Stephen. Hope you are doing well, sir. Bruce is on, says, good morning, gentlemen. Jara is on. Tiny says, I've had building shooters for a couple of years. Very good book. Mike is on. Mr. Mike Brown, what's up, warfighters? Good morning, sir. Jason says, stop shooting when they are in a non-retaliatory position equals when they are no longer a threat. Yep, spot on. So please like and share. We got a couple more moments here with John. I got a couple more questions for him. Please like and share before we go much further. But if you're just joining us or you're watching the replay, my name is Rich Brown. This is Coffee with Rich, and I'm the co-host of the American Warrior Show, co-founder of the American Warrior Society. And I am so thankful to be joined by Jon Marvell this morning, the president of technology for building shooters. John, let's see here, man. I've got another question for you. Let's talk about the current state of affairs, man. And I know that you're probably watching the news like I am, and maybe you're concerned with some of the lawlessness you've seen. You've been around the world, man. You've been in combat multiple times. You've seen where this could go, and you're watching on TV, probably like I am, man. Where are we heading with all this lawlessness in America?
Yes, that's kind of troubling, right? And it's the kind of thing that can keep you up at night, of course. I would say, so to break things down, right, I look at the world real simple, right? I'm a God-fearing patriot, love the country, love the Constitution. I think the founding fathers had just beyond amazing insight when they wrote that document. And so I don't think at any point in that document or in their time, the idea that good behavior should be driven by our laws, right? Our laws define the boundary between criminal behavior and not criminal behavior, right? So we go back to for our type of government to work, or for our type of society to really work effectively, we all have to be self-regulating, right? In other words, I don't need you to tell me what good behavior is. We all need to agree on what that is and not necessarily have laws written about it, because sorry if this is getting a little weird, but my point is, law is great, but it doesn't matter if it's not enforced, right? And when you write a law, typically the only people that are going to follow it without enforcement are the ones that weren't breaking it in the first place. So kind of distilling it down to that, I think we've got a real problem with some really strange times, right? Folks are applying rules that to one situation. For example, I don't mind what the outcome of the vote is, for example, but I want to know that it's a legitimate outcome. And I would think everyone wants to know that the vote is legitimate and there's no tampering or no whatever. That's really difficult to do if there's no, right? When I went to sign up, when I became a Virginia resident, I had to show a photo ID to register and things like that. And I'm not sure, I honestly don't remember if I had to show an ID when I went to vote last fall. I thought I did. But the idea of a mail-in vote this year, after so many years in the military of doing the absentee ballot, that from what I found out didn't really count, kind of disappointing. But now, right, the COVID thing becomes an excuse to keep people away from the polls, which, where it's pretty straightforward to check people out and know that that was really who they were. But they didn't want to apply that same logic to keeping mobs from rioting and looting in certain areas. And I don't really want to touch on those subjects too much, because I'm not looking to start fights here. I'm trying to get people to talk. I'd rather that we recognize that you and I can have complete polar opposites of opinion, but we can still talk and try and understand each other too. Right now, there's just too much, in my opinion, there's too many people that, hey, you don't agree with me, you're a racist, you're a bigot, et cetera, et cetera. Just kill the conversation. There's nothing to understand. And that gets kind of troubling, right? That's not how mature adults work through any problem, right? So in a work environment, right, we're just trying to figure out whatever problem, math problem, whatever it is, and we think there's a different approach to it, right? We've got a difference of opinion. We work through that. We figure that out. Okay, I see where you're coming from. Oh, okay, I got it. And usually that leads to both people coming away better, smarter, like broadened horizons in the best case. So I'm not sure why we're so troubled here in today's society on the political forefront. We're really getting divided, and that's kind of the troubling thing. So the lawlessness, I get it. People, when they feel like they've got no other outlet, that's what they do. They act out. I mean, we all do it to some degree. But I think it's a big problem. And I think coming back, maybe more important to your audience and what American Warrior Society is all about, I am my own carcass commander. So I take accountability for my life. I take responsibility for my choices. It's not like, freedom and responsibility from the consequences of your choices have to be inseparable. If I choose to be real blunt, if I choose to be a real a-hole, then I expect to be treated like one, right? And nobody's going to want to work with me. No one's going to want to be my friend, my neighbor, etc. So I do try to do things that make me at least more appealing and more, beneficial to a team if we're talking about workforce or whatever. So I keep all that in mind. I can't just, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want and not think there's going to be consequences from doing things that, in many cases, right, they're blatantly challenging people's, sense of what's right or what's acceptable behavior or whatnot. So, I think what you guys promote and taking that accountability for your lives, for your own protection, for defending your families and that, I think at the end of the day, that is as patriotic as it gets. I think that's what, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights is all about, in all honesty, is capturing that we all have the freedom to make those choices. So I'm troubled, I think, as probably most of this audience is, about, the lawlessness, about where things are going. In all honesty, right, I like to think that, those situations where we do have to take things into our hands or defend ourselves, God forbid, I like to think those are actions of last resort. So I really hope I hope we all kind of come together and can kind of come to the table before things get really, really heated, right? And it gets to be worse.
Yeah, well said, John. And if you have a question for Jon Marvell this morning, the president of technology at Building Shooters, please throw it up here, and we'll take those questions as they come. But Andrew, my shooting partner and law enforcement officer down here in Tennessee, says COVID has now become a political weapon to influence the election. It certainly seems that way. I want to touch on something that you mentioned at the beginning, John, of that answer to my question regarding lawlessness. And you mentioned that, and I'm going to paraphrase and use some of my own words here, but more or less that laws can have a coercive effect, right? In order to make people behave in a certain way, but we shouldn't need that. And I will tell you, my wife sometimes will say, well, you're breaking the law right now. And I'll say, if the law is immoral, I think we have a duty to break that law. And I use Rosa Parks, one of my personal heroes, of someone who, Rosa Parks didn't burn the bus down. She just refused to get up out of the seat because that law was immoral and no one should have to follow it. So I think there's a time and place when, the Nazis were following the law when they exterminated 6 million Jews across Europe. So I think I can understand some level of civil disobedience, but looting a Target and stealing a flat screen, man, is not what Rosa Parks did, and it's not what anybody should be doing. To do injustice to one person because of a perceived injustice to you or to another group, I think is immoral, unethical, and completely unacceptable. What say you, sir?
No, I'm right there with you. When the rioting and the looting, it never, all it does is it gets people watching TV and the news, right? It doesn't seem to accomplish much of anything. And I will say, right, I've got 4 children and all teenage and beyond. So they certainly see things different than I do. And understandably, right, our experiences shape that very heavily. So I understand, I guess, just from talking with them and talking to their friends, my point with addressing the coming together and talking, that's actually for the people that really are the true believers, if you will, on the issue, right? The ones that are out protesting, not rioting and looting. The other bit of that, I get you, man. I think the Rosa Parks example, completely agree, right? Perfect example, right? It's not a legitimate law now, right? If you do that, obviously, there was arrests and things that happened, but man, that started an avalanche, and a good avalanche at that, right? It changed things for the better. And it could have been a lot worse had she and a lot of the folks with her gone violent, right? It would have been very different.
Yeah. Thank you to the 41 folks that are still with us this morning. And thank you to everyone that will watch in the replay. Stephen Washington, our good friend from Firearms Instructor Development, of course, says too many arguing, fighting, and not enough trying to understand one another's perspective to find the optimal solution. Not one side has the most comprehensive solution to our country's problems. Man, well said, Stephen. You're right. There are aspects about both sides that I like and both sides that I don't. Mike Brown says, not sure if this has been covered yet, but I'm seeing a lot of vehicles stopped and overwhelmed during the riots. Reminds me a lot of the public response to stop convoys I've seen gunned downrange in OIF. Any thoughts on the mindset of people who are unfortunate enough to be stopped by mobs? You have any thoughts on that?
No, nothing I'd want to share publicly. I'm pretty sure I know how I would handle things, but yeah, I am going to protect myself, and I really feel bad for that's the kind of suffering that I'm talking about. It's such a shame that I'm making bold assumptions that folks in that scenario are just hapless victims that just happen to turn down the wrong street, and lo and behold, they might not make it home that night. That is truly tragic.
Yeah, I tell you, I was in the Middle East as a much younger man, and somebody set up a roadblock, and I was in a vehicle with a couple other Marines. It was late at night, and I blew through the roadblock and got the vehicle back in, got the Marines in safely, and then it turned out it was a legitimate roadblock by the government, and they came in and reported it, and I got a little slap on the wrist for it. But hey, man, I would do it again.
You're here to tell the story.
That's right. Robert says good morning. James says good morning. Ruben says never let a crisis go to waste. I forget who said that, but yeah, and they're definitely not letting this one go to waste. Dr. Johnathan says we are seeing an organized Marxist coup attempt to overthrow the constitutional government of the United States. It is facilitated by the far left wing of the Democratic Party. Pretty succinct there, Dr. Adine. And there's certainly is a lot of evidence for what you're saying, sir. I don't dispute the evidence that is out there for everyone to see. Let's see what else we have here. I have some other questions. How does your company help shape law enforcement training in the future, specifically some of the products that you and Dusty are working on, man? Because now, if there ever was a time that law enforcement is under a greater degree of scrutiny and are searching for some tools, what do you guys have coming up?
Yeah, so I think I talked about that a bit before. So the idea of what the neuro will allow law enforcement to do is, again, it integrates decision making into every aspect of how small arms training is done, live fire and or dry fire or any other, right? You can apply this technology, or it'll be able to be applied to any technology, whether that's airsoft, right? We want to cover all the bases. So at the end of the day, right? So for example, when I ask someone, hey, what time is it? Whoop, the hand comes up. Oh, it's 7:30. They don't think about that, right? That's an unconscious competence that people have. Or, hey, I need you to sign this. Whoop, the pen comes out of the pocket, scribble, scribble, pen's back in the pocket. They're not even thinking about what they just did, but they did it as efficiently as their body possibly could. Didn't think about it, just boom, done. And how people get to that point through training, and Jon Marvell's words here, is you go from a conscious non-competence to an unconscious competence. It's through reps and sets, right? We call it muscle memory. We call it a lot of things. But at the end of the day, you learn human skills, and performance comes from reps and sets of doing it properly, of course. And that's, there's volumes and volumes of books that talk about, how that's been scientifically proven. So what we want to do, again, is we want to do things that don't limit to, hey, the only time I'm doing anything with my firearm as a law enforcement professional is once or twice a year. I think is probably worst cases where they go and they shoot a pretty small amount and they're good for the year, for that half of the year, whatever. We want this to be something where it's easy to integrate in to a much, much more routine schedule, right? So everybody, pretty much everybody drives a car, right? So automobile skills are pretty, granted, there's some sketchy ones out there, right? But for the most part, everyone knows how to drive safe and do that, but they do it every day. And it's kind of like that same idea with the example of the watch and the pen. We want to get it to where it's proliferating at every level, and it makes it completely easy for guys to do it. But most importantly, back to the law enforcement professional, the neuro is going to bring decision-making integrated into every step of the firearms training. And I think that's going to revolutionize things.
Now, will there be an app or something like that, John, that puts it on the laptop so that I can analyze my shooters in real time or do some analysis post-shooting?
Yeah, great question. So part of our phase one, or our core offering, is going to be the neuro itself, and they will be able to network together. Just because of the limits of the technology we have, they can network together to about 4 devices. And then the isolation tool, which is a different, little bit different technology that'll link to the main device. And we're also going to work on a mobile app, which will do primarily, exactly what you'll say. It may not have all that capability to do the metrics until we get the assessment tool developed, and that's kind of a phase 2 product where we'll actually be able to do the scoring and the measuring after the fact. But yes, there's going to be a mobile app. So, primarily smartphone's kind of a small screen to work with, but a tablet would probably be ideal. You'll be able to manage arrays of targets. You'll be able to see who's doing what in the initial offering. And again, that totally trying to make things easy and convenient and effective for the shooter, but easy and convenient for the folks that do that.
Now, the prototype I saw, John, was maybe a little bit bigger than a like a PAC-2 timer, but is this something it's a handheld device, or will it be put on a tripod, or can you tell them a little bit about what might it look like?
Yeah, so it can be used in either fashion. So it's meant to be handheld. It can be handheld, so you can have one-on-one training. You can, just like people do with a shot timer now, you have an instructor and a student kind of situation. And then again, if you start networking these, you have multiple target arrays, right? We'll have either there is a tripod mount that's integrated into the case, and we're also trying to develop something a little more proprietary, specific for for what we're doing for range use, where you can have these devices set up on each target, and then they're networked to operate remotely via that mobile app or via the different modes that the neuro will have for remote or wireless and network communication or operation.
Okay. Yeah. We talked a little bit what that is and how that links to law enforcement. Is there a military application as well?
I think so. I think, like I say, we're not specifically trying to go after a military market at this time, but we do feel like this is obviously going to have application to anybody that shoots. And we're primarily wanting to go after law enforcement first and foremost, because they're, in our minds, they're the ones most in need. This product, we think, will absolutely benefit them first and foremost. I know Dustin's talked with Mike about this from the inception, back when it was just a bar napkin, crayon drawing and concept, and pretty much he's got a pretty good following of professionals in the industry that are very excited to see this product get out there. So once we have working prototypes and things like that, obviously you're probably going to get to see that, in beta testing kind of capability with Mike, if you do a lot of training with him. So yeah, I think it's good. There's a lot of application for military. I think there's a lot of application for even broader markets, but first and foremost, I think with the phase one, we think the law enforcement community is going to benefit most.
Let's talk about phase two or phase three. I'm going to shoot way down the road here with you for just a moment, John. And what I'm getting at is something that Mike Brown just brought up here, said they're going to have to invent a new class of IDPA when this rolls out. So have you guys considered the application for the competitive community? That right now, the only stimulus we get, the go command, is the shot timer's beep, but what it might look like for the competitive world.
Yeah, we've speculated on that. I think our Dusty's really the guy that gives the vision. I've got more like pieces of that collage, and I'm trying really hard to keep up with him. But yeah, we've speculated that this could go into a whole different realm, a whole different market, right? Where you don't even need real firearms, right? There could be a gaming aspect to this when we get fully developed, fully realized with the full system of systems. And that's really exciting too, because again, in my opinion, that makes our society a little less sensitive to the ideas of firearms and firearms training, which is kind of weird because you think about how violent the video games our kids are playing, right? Nobody seems to bat an eye at that, but when it comes to, you say the word guns and everybody starts, throwing holy water around and things like that. So I think it's kind of kooky because it's just a tool, right? It can be used for good or bad, just like a car or anything else. So I hope it affects society in kind of a loftier, aspiration like that. But yeah, we've thought about a lot of possibilities with this, and we think there's really limitless potential for this.
And Robert says, "I'm sorry I came in late. What is the product?" It's something that would you say it's going to replace the shot timer or work in concert with it?
I think it's probably a new evolution in a shot timer, perhaps, because it's going to give you the same metrics. Thanks, Robert, for asking that question. It's going to give you the same metrics. It's just going to give you the option of not just a buzzer and record your shots, but it's also going to give you visual stimulation. So in other words, you can use a visual cue to stimulate the same kind of threat assessment and stimuli that you would in a real tactical environment as your go signal or your stop signal or your escalation of force, or however you want to design your scenario. That's the beauty. It's a real open architecture. We're trying to, the hardest part, honestly, was trying to imagine all the things that we expect it could be applied to and make sure we design a system in right firmware that allows for all that. And then we know there's going to be a whole bunch of other stuff that really, really creative people are going to go, well, hey, I could do this if I do that. And we'll be like, okay, hopefully we don't limit, the ability to do that, or, we're going to have to, write new firmware or whatever it takes. We expect that there's going to be multiple generations of the product based on customer feedback, right? Just like anything, we do intend to improve it as we go. And we definitely, like I say, we really care about our customers, right? This is super important to both of us. I would say we're certainly true believers when it comes to effective training, and certainly the first responders, right, that take care of us all.
Yeah, absolutely. And Donald was just joining from Texas, coin number 1499. Good morning, Donald. Looks like you missed a great show, Donald, so you're definitely going to have to go back and rewatch this one. I've had Jon on for almost an hour now. I want to be very respectful of your time. I know you guys have got a lot going on there at Building Shooters. Where can they find out more about what you and Dusty are up to?
Yes, so the best place to look and learn about what the company's about and about our methodology, about our mindset, our mission is check out the Building Shooters website. I think we don't have a lot on the product about neuro on there just yet, just because, again, we're still in development. We're largely at the point where we've got all the hard parts figured out, and we're just finishing up our firmware. And once we have, I'll just say I'm a big fan of under-promising and over-delivering. So I'll say less, but that's the best you can. If you there should be some links on Building Shooters website too, if you want to send specific questions. And I know Dustin has his own blog there for Building Shooters as well. You can fire questions at him, and he absolutely loves to talk about this stuff, about this methodology and about what the neuro can do for everyone.
And I have Dusty's books. Where can they find those books that Dusty's written, Mentoring Shooters and the like?
Yeah, so Dustin's books are, you'll find links on the website, on the Building Shooters website, and you'll also find those on Amazon if you type in and search for Building Shooters, Mentoring Shooters, or On Training. And On Training is fairly new, so I'm not 100% sure you'll find that on Amazon yet, but I think you will. I didn't verify this morning, so I didn't do my homework.
Jon, thank you for coming on this morning. Any saved rounds before we close it out?
No, Rich, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to talk with you. It's great to talk to you again. Really thoroughly enjoyed meeting you guys out in Oklahoma a month or so ago. And I see a lot of familiar names there chiming in. Hello to y'all, and hope you all are doing well. It's great to get on here and talk about things that matter with a bunch of great Americans and like-minded folks. So thank you.
Well, Jon, thank you for coming on. And thank everyone for watching this morning, whether you watched us live or in the replay. It means a lot to Mike and I that you got up with us this morning, had some coffee, and learned about what they're doing over at Building Shooters, because I don't really know of anybody else that is using cutting-edge neuroscience to help build better decision-making in our shooters. Let's just leave it at that, as well as marksmanship as well. So thank you guys for what you're doing over there, Jon. And thank you, everybody, and stay safe, because the fight is coming. Be ready.